Humility, our theme for the month, is an often misunderstood word. This week I learned that another common phrase is more nuanced than I had considered: self-esteem. I always reduced self-esteem to be synonymous with pride. Don't let them bully you. Put your head up and your shoulders back. Have some self-esteem. Well, in 1890, William James first identified self-esteem as important in psychology. One of the oldest concepts in the field of psychology, it still is today one of the most often researched and written about. It's important stuff. James got really specific about what self-esteem is. He described it as a formula. Self-esteem equals success divided by our goals, values, and what we believe about our potential. If our actual achievements are low and our believed potential and goals are high, we see ourselves as failures or maybe not great. Conversely, if our success exceeds our expectations, we feel good about ourselves and self-esteem rises. There's an important detail in there, though. You may have heard me mention the words values and goals. Self-esteem is different from self-efficacy, our ability to do something. Self-esteem is about our ability to do things that we really care about. For example, I learned a few months ago that I am not good at indoor rock climbing, or not as good as I had expected. Seeing friends scramble up the wall more quickly did lower my sense of self-efficacy. But that doesn't lower my self-esteem or make me think less of myself. I don't care about rock climbing anyway. But seriously, to impact our self-esteem, we have to really care about the activity or skill that we're considering. Why all this bother? Well, because self-esteem is invaluable. It's the root of our own sense of self-worth, beyond the ideal of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It's knowing yourself and your abilities well enough that it's not what other people think that matters, but what you know to be true about yourself that matters. And there is a healthy balance to be struck that's grounded in reality. Similarly, humility is a matter of striking a healthy balance between excessive pride on the one hand and insecurity or self-loathing on the other. There's a story from the Hasidic tradition of Judaism of a pious man who visits the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was the Jewish rabbi that founded the Hasidic tradition. And this pious man says, "I've labored long and hard in the service of God, yet all my labors have not improved me. I still am an ordinary, ignorant person." The Baal Shem Tov answers, "You have come to understand that you are ordinary and ignorant, and that is no small accomplishment." I love the wisdom of this story. You've come to understand yourself as ordinary, and that is no small accomplishment. We usually think of humility as a needed correction for the overly prideful. Perhaps you remember the story of Icarus. In Greek mythology, Icarus was the son of incredible master craftsman named Daedalus. Daedalus had been the builder of a complex and confusing labyrinth in Crete. This isn't the kind of meditation labyrinth that you wander through peacefully. It was designed to trap people, particularly King Theseus of Athens, but he was able to escape from that labyrinth. So King Minos suspected Daedalus and his son Icarus had given the secrets of how to escape. So Minos imprisoned them in a tower overlooking the sea. In his master craftsman ingenuity, he came up with a plan. He would construct giant wings for Icarus to fly out of the tower to safety. Using what they had access to, Daedalus constructed the wings from feathers, threads from blankets, clothes, and beeswax. It would be a dangerous endeavor. He warned Icarus first of complacency and then of hubris, instructing him to fly neither too high or too low, lest the sea dampen and clog up his wings or the sun's heat melt the wax that held them together. Icarus was so enthralled with the adventure, as we all would be by flying, he ignored his father's instructions. Flying too close to the sun's heat caused the beeswax to melt. Icarus fell from the sky, plummeting into the sea and drowned. And so we have the common expression, don't fly too close to the sun. It's striking that the father's other warning, the other very real danger, is often forgotten from this story. Don't fly too low. Don't be too complacent or too fearful of your ability to fly, lest your wings be overcome by the mist and the moisture and you get bogged down. Just like a healthy self-esteem, appropriate humility is about striking a balance. Perhaps we can find some balance to the story of Icarus and the warning to not fly too close to the sun with the call stories of the prophets of the Hebrew Bible. For each one, there's a moment when a reluctant leader first comes into contact with God, and in almost every case, the prophet is afraid and at first tries to reject the responsibility. Though these are mostly men, the same formula happens to a few women as well. Every single one of them says no at least once, and usually 3 times. I have a particular fondness for the way Moses was talked into his leadership role. You probably remember this was where he was told to take off his sandals because he was on holy ground, and there was the burning bush that was not consumed by the flames. We tend to remember the more fanciful stuff. But the way Moses responds to his calling to be a leader is probably a lot more pertinent to our lives. When God tells Moses that he's going to lead his people, Moses gives 3 different excuses that we can easily relate to. First, he says, "You couldn't possibly mean me. Surely there's someone else that would do the job better." Then Moses protests, "The people won't believe me. I'm not a real leader." And finally, he argues back to God's calling. "I don't have the right words," he says. One of the most iconic leaders of the Judeo-Christian history, the deliverer of the Jewish people out of slavery in Egypt, the person who received the 10 Commandments and led his people to the promised land, Moses himself felt unworthy of the task. At first, he thought he didn't have the right words and the people wouldn't believe him. He's just one of the examples of the prophets. That tradition actually carries over in an interesting way to the founding of Islam. When Muhammad was approached by Allah, he was unable to read and write. In his call to leadership, Allah required Muhammad to read these blazing writing that was happening in front of him miraculously. And 3 times Muhammad said, "I cannot do it," until an angel wraps its wings around Muhammad and squeezed, it says. Only then did he begin to speak the word of God, only with the supportive embrace of an angel. Too often, we think of leadership as someone having great skill, knowledge, and charisma. We think a leader is someone who uses their innate strength to organize people to accomplish some amazing feat. Today, I want to offer us a different vision of leadership. Just as often as someone is a born leader, people and communities become leaders through a journey of self-discovery. Leadership develops out of a slow growing of faith in oneself and faith in what people know to be true. It's a setting aside of shame and fear and insecurities and offering their life humbly as a vehicle for something bigger than themselves. Actual humility, setting aside your own pride and your own insecurity, is a wildly brave way to be in the world. It's no wonder that Moses, Muhammad, and other prophets inspired such devoted trust. In their faithful humility, they demonstrated something exceptionally rare and powerful. When we are at our best, I believe this is what allows Unitarian Universalism to punch above our weight, as they say. For such a small religious tradition, we have a very outsized impact on the world. While I do wish we were a little bit larger sometimes, I am grateful that we are large in spirit and in voice. Unless you've really dug around our website or been a member here for a very long time, you're probably not familiar with Tapestry's vision statement. We don't refer to it often, but Tapestry's vision, yes, it's the same one that was here when you were here, like over a decade ago. The vision statement is to be a transformational home for liberal spirituality and a dynamic community leader in Orange County and beyond. It has been our vision statement for a long time. Tara is up here laughing because I think she was involved in writing it a long time ago. There have been a few starts at rewriting it, and probably if we updated it today, that sense of leadership would still be in there somewhere. Maybe we would use different words to describe it, but there is a sense of responsibility at Tapestry to make our values manifest in the world, to demonstrate to our neighbors a different way of being, and to lean into growth. Usually when I read our vision statement, it makes me a little bit nervous with the question, what type of leader do we want to be? Leadership isn't an inherently good thing, after all. There are plenty of models of bad leadership, illegitimate leadership, coercive leadership, especially in religious traditions. I believe that as a congregation, we're leaning into authentic leadership. Rather than buying influence or showing off all of our degrees and titles and claiming perfection, we're leaning into leading by being our whole selves and growing with other people. Most of you are aware that Sophia Uehara is making a documentary film about Tapestry and our engagement with the eighth principle. The proposed eighth principle would be an addition to our current 7 principles. It states, "We covenant to affirm and promote journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions." Sophia is a young filmmaker. She grew up in this congregation. As a biracial person, making this film is an opportunity to take a snapshot at Tapestry and probably to dig into a little more of the influences of her own life. When I first heard about the project, I thought, cool! It's a movie about us. As I thought more about it, I realized, wait, this is a film about us. It will be documenting how we navigate something that we have real disagreements about. In some congregations, making decisions about the eighth principle has fomented deep conflict. Do I really want our congregation to be recorded as we navigate this thorny issue? As we openly disagree with each other? That's scary. In conversation with the Racial Justice Task Force, I realized that this is an opportunity for Tapestry to lean into our commitment to be leaders. We are not on the leading edge of anti-racism work. We are exceptionally strong in many areas, but this is not one of them. We are actually a little behind the game when it comes to the eighth principle. Neither are we, by UU standards, stubbornly clinging to outdated past or prone to excessive conflict. Much like the rabbi in the story I mentioned earlier, we're pretty ordinary. We're similar to hundreds of other smallish UU congregations struggling to live into our values, having some hard conversations about how to do that the best. Our leadership isn't saying, "We know the way, follow us." Our leadership is showing up in our honesty and our vulnerability and our willingness to bring our whole selves to the conversation and do the best we can in our own way to create positive change. It's not primarily in our being right that we are exceptional. It's in our willingness to stay at the table and share our struggle with openness and integrity that sets us apart. As we prepare for our annual meeting in just a minute, I count myself blessed to be among you, a community that is willing to be honest with each other and with a world about what matters so deeply to us. Amen.